I'm three. Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Sam Shay from drsamshay.com. I'm here with a colleague, Meghan Bond from intensityhub.com. That's intensityhub.com. Megan is a TEDx speaker, neurodivergent business coach, and founder of intensityhub.com, where people can discover their unique intensity profile to work the way they are wired. She supports gifted, 2E slash twice exceptional, ADHD, autistic, and other neurodivergent young adults in building career development skills and transitioning into independent living. Through her work, The Way We're Wired virtual program, and her neuro-inclusive intentional living rental home in Arvada, Colorado, she creates empowering environments where creative and outside the box thinkers can thrive both personally and professionally. Thank you, Megan. It's great to chat with you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, how did discovering your neurodivergence as an adult shift the way you approach your work?
So, before I knew I was neurodivergent, I was working in the public schools as an educational leader,
Mhm.
and I was really passionate about creating inclusive environments for neurodivergent students and really leading systems change. And what I didn't realize was that I was not including myself in my
Mm.
advocacy. And discovering that I was wired differently and I was trying to sort of shrink and fit in to this environment that really wasn't sensory friendly, that really didn't honor a lot of my strengths or meet a lot of my needs, that I needed to kind of take a step back and figure out what worked for me so that I could really, be thriving at work too. And that was actually a really impactful way to be a part of the neurodiversity movement is just to include myself.
Interesting. And what ways were you not including yourself but being supportive of others? Like that's it would think that if you were supporting others, that naturally one would supporting oneself in the same way. Was there a specific moment where you realized that you need to include yourself in the same way you support others?
I mean, one example is just when I saw this neurodivergent middle schooler walking down the hallway to the main office because he was constantly getting kicked out of class. Um, that he ended up getting let out to a police car. And I asked the administrators what happened, and they were like, well, he had his music playing from a speaker at the cafeteria, and the adult said he couldn't do that, and he wouldn't give it to them, and became defiant and dangerous, and all of these things. And I just thought, how can I be a part of an environment that treats people over something so small as music playing in the cafeteria that it would escalate so much? And when I brought up my concerns and shared a different approach to supporting kids who maybe had big emotions and got dysregulated over interactions like that, it was just like, you stay in your lane, you're too idealistic, too sensitive. And I'm just like, these are my strengths, is what I realize, that I'm sensitive and idealistic and um, want to change the system. And so I was just feeling absolutely exhausted. I couldn't be present for my family. I'm like, I'm here fighting for these kids at my school where I work, but I'm not doing well health wise. And my kids are needing extra support, and I don't have any energy for that. And so I need to, start with myself and my family before I'm able to give from an overflow of energy rather than just sacrifice everything in my wellness at my job.
Sounds very formative.
Hmm.
Very, very formative. Yeah, as someone myself on the spectrum and not being able to cope with all the sensory overwhelm, I didn't lash out publicly, but I certainly self-flagellated and it kind of like I went the other direction, like all the violence was directed inward and the outrage was directed inward, and just so uh, I've never been hauled away in a police car, but I think if there was a megaphone put up to my brain of what I was thinking, I would for sure be taken away when I was younger, of just the level of rage that I was experiencing from just everything that was happening to me, and no one no one defending. So I applaud you for taking. I'm sure that was a very formative moment in that child's life, but you also took the opportunity to make it formative in your own life. With that, um, and how when you're working with neurodivergent professionals, what are some of the biggest barriers that neurodivergent professionals have when it comes to work?
A lot of the same things that I experience where they think they just have to mold themselves into what their leaders are saying. You know, this is your lane, this is what you're supposed to do. You need to work these hours, you need to be productive in this way. This is how we want you to be at work. And it really is, harmful for people to their health, to their ability to contribute and get to do the things that they love to do and contribute in the way that really lights them up.
Hmm.
We're missing out on a lot of that when people are told that they need to do things a certain way. So same thing I was experiencing. And even when I'm working with entrepreneurs, to just be doing business in the way that people say you should do it this way. And it's like, no, but we need to be doing it the way that works for us. And it's not always the traditional ways. Oftentimes we invent completely new ways of working or doing things that work for us.
So how do you, this may be a larger can of worms, but genuinely curious, like what happens when there is a genuine conflict between the way someone on the spectrum is approaching something versus another person in the same work environment, and it's disruptive, like the way that the quote normie community has expectations on us can be very disruptive, but what about our ways of perceiving and acting can be equally disruptive towards them? How do you reconcile us there, other people need who are not on any type of spectrum also needing accommodation if our method of processing, especially externally, does disrupt them?
Yeah, I think that it's a opportunity for learning for both people involved when anytime there's a conflict or tension in terms of different people's needs,
Hmm.
that's an opportunity to think through, well, what is under the need? What specifically is the problem? What's okay and what's not okay for each person? And now let's get creative and problem solve in a way that's mutually agreeable
Hmm.
because one person's needs are never more important than another person's needs. And when we are able to really uncover and articulate what those are and figure out how to get creative to meet each person's needs and still reach the goal, that there's actually more innovation happening. We're using more different people's areas of strengths, and it's only going to help the business.
Got it. Yeah. I wish there was somehow like um some sort of decode manual, like uh and uh uh like um there's dating profiles, but there should be like work profiles of like I prefer this and I like that, and like this is, I mean there are systems out there where it's like Disc and Colby, but I don't think they don't take into account specific spectrumy type variables. But yeah.
I mean, that's part of the reason why I developed the intensity profile that's on my
Hmm.
website. It's very aligned with a lot of neurodivergent traits, and it's very strength-based, but also doesn't like dismiss the needs that are associated with it too, because I think our traits are not always a superpower. Like we have
No,
needs that are
definitely not.
associated with it too.
No.
And so to be able to have language to describe, here's the trait, here's the strengths that it has, here's the needs that are associated with it, I think is a really helpful way to just have that common language to communicate about it.
When you say the needs, no, I come from a background of nonviolent communication. Are you using the same needs in that when you say needs?
It could be, and it could get even more specific around like, I have a need for movement throughout the day, especially at these times of days, or in this way, it works best for me. Or I have a need for an accountability partner to help me break down my goals into smaller chunks and help me predict the time it will take for it. And my strength is my big picture thinking, and I'm a visionary. And my strength is I am active and action oriented, and I have lots of ideas. And so those are some associated with some of the intensities, and they show up as strengths, and there's associated things where it's like, this is really something that I need to be able to move around during a meeting and have be able to stand or start work at this time or whatever.
So I mean, I have, my background as a comic, I would say things like, yeah, I have a set of superpowers and a buffet of kryptonite and kryptonite. But, joking aside, I like what how you're phrasing is like superpowers and needs as opposed to superpowers and kryptonites. Like, because I have a kryptonite of, piercing of high frequency sound is devastating for me personally. I spent on my 60-minute comedy show, I spent 3 minutes, 5% of the whole show just devoted to sound sensitivity. And I actually went to an audiologist recently, and she diagnosed me with, most people have extreme discomfort when they hear something at 85 decibels. For high frequency noise, for low frequency noise, it's 65 decibels. So I have a 20 decibel handicap. And then at high pitch, it's 45. So 45 decibels is when it's discomfort. So for me, it's a 40 decibel handicap for me. And so I could say my kryptonite is sound, particularly high pitched sound. But if I understand you correctly, you're saying if I reframe it as a need, that I have a need to uh be in a quieter space, particularly not with non-high frequency sound, because because it will cause physical pain and I'm unable to focus. I'd actually have to like run out the room.
Hmm.
I have a need for concert earplugs at all times.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So that's what you're talking about need versus my phrasing need versus kryptonite. When you're saying need, it's you're actually translating what the challenge is into a specific action step that the work environment can support you with. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think when we use the term need instead of challenge or deficit or struggle or weakness,
Hmm.
it really is a way to talk about something that everybody has different needs. Nobody's needs are, more important or less important than anybody else's, and we have different profiles of needs. And so if the more it deviates from neuronormativity of like, that's really different than what we have decided is the right amount of need or the right type of need,
Hmm.
then that's when the problems happen. But it's really, we all just have
I like
different
that. I like that a lot. I think people can have much more compassion and also a sense of agency that they can do something to support if it's
needs.
framed as a need versus a kryptonite, which, we've images of Superman just wilting under a green light and nothing able to help except make the bad thing go away. And uh, it also it kind of creates a different type of buffet, a buffet of options for people to support. I like that. Uh, so with that, what can I mean, I think we may have already answered this in this sense, but like what can we better support? How can we better support neurodivergent young adults in transitioning to a more fulfilling career that does leverage their strengths and also uh, diplomatically and accurately shares the needs that they need support with?
Yeah, I mean, the first step is really having that language and self-awareness to be able to talk about their strengths and their needs and their traits in a way that they're not ashamed of it, that they just accept themselves and see the value in how they're wired.
Hmm.
Um, and then the second thing is I'm a huge proponent of entrepreneurship because it's the most flexible job when you work for yourself
Hmm.
and you can actually design systems and really set it up so that you're doing your strength as much as possible. You're delegating or you're automating and you're working together. You don't have to do it alone to be able to leverage other people's strengths in areas that are harder for you. And so I love working with people who want to test out, could I do my area of interest and expertise as a job? And what would it look like to set up systems for me to be able to truly create the exact work environment and structure and systems that work for me?
Excellent. Yeah, that's uh, I like I like the self-honesty of it a lot. And uh and also it gives a framework for people outside the spectrum to be of support.
Mhm.
And uh I also think entrepreneurship is, look, it's not for the faint of heart. I wouldn't say entrepreneurship is not this kind of, I'm just gonna drop out of high school and create the newest pencil in my garage. It's gonna be great, you know? Like, first off, this isn't the 50s. Pencils are kind of on the way out anyway. But when I became an entrepreneur, if I had a roadmap, or at least a roadmap of my own uh, of my own superpowers and needs, I would have made life a lot easier for the first, 10, 15 years for sure.
Yes.
Uh, Meg, is there anything else you wanted to share? You can tell us a bit more about the intensity profile before we
Yeah,
sign
I
off.
mean, it's based on Dabrowski's research and the theory of positive disintegration. And so there's five areas of intensity, and different people have more intense levels and traits. And so I would just encourage people to go to my website, intensityhub.com, and fill out the questionnaire to learn more about your unique traits and strengths and get those follow-up emails that explain a little bit more about it and tell my story about how those showed up for me at work and how I now leverage them.
Why is it called intensity? I mean, intensity is a very it's a highly non-random word. Why the word intensity?
So, in the original research of the theory, they were called overexcitabilities. And I don't like that term because it's like I've always felt like over too much. And
Mhm.
so I wanted to rebrand them. And I really think that the concept of intensity is more of a neutral term that is really a part of the lived experience of a lot of neurodivergent people. And is really just a more accessible term of that people can kind of understand this is what it is and it's not good or bad. It's just what is.
Got it. Got it. Anything else, Megan, you want to share?
Um, the last thing is that I'm really excited about is just creating community with the community living opportunity. And um, I have been exploring intentional community living with my family for the last several years and am excited to get to start to create housing where neurodivergent people can really be in a place where they can unmask and be themselves and have some systems and supports in place to be able to really thrive with their housing. And I think that's so interconnected with work and just that big transition that young adults face when they're leaving home and going into the workforce and being independent. And so combining just that housing and working support together to create community for people is something I'm really excited about.
And where could people go to find more information on that?
Also at intensityhub.com, I have a inquiry form, and then I reach out to them to have a conversation more about what they're looking for and if it might be a good fit.
Nice. Okay. Well, thank you, Megan. It was great to chat with you. And the website is intensityhub.com. And there people can get their profile and also learn more about the intentional living. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.